Welcome to OState Daily. Casey Porter here, joined by Chase Whiska, as I am each and every week. And we are talking about a glorious Oklahoma State victory, 44-20, over the South Dakota State Jackrabbits, who had not lost a game in their last 29-game win streak. So, hey, the Jackrabbits came into Stillwater expecting to win. It was a business trip to them, and they found out what a good Division I FCS football team looks like in Oklahoma State.
Yeah, man, Oklahoma State looked really, really good. And that's not to discredit South Dakota State whatsoever, because they came in, they're a good football program. They really are. And with what Oklahoma State was able to do throughout the entire game, I think that speaks volumes as to what the season's going to look like. They didn't take South Dakota State for granted. And we talked about this last week. I didn't think they were going to, just with the portrayed message that, hey, these guys want to come in and beat you, and they're capable of doing it if you let them. It was all gas, no brakes from the first snap.
It absolutely was. Kind of frustrating narrative for some Oklahoma State fans, and I know Coach Gundy hit on it in the post-game show. I hit on it in the highlight show. Oklahoma State wasn't terrible in the run game, but they weren't as explosive as you thought they might be against a FCS 1AA team. But I tell you what, even FCS teams, if they want to stop the run, and even Ollie Gordon, they can. So Oklahoma State did a great job taking advantage of that, throwing to Rashad Owens on the edge and exploiting those one-on-one matchups. But I'll tell you what Oklahoma State did really, really well to counter the fact that South Dakota State was, basically they were in man coverage basically the entire game, saying, hey, we're going to load the box, we're going to man it up on the outside and see how that works for us. And so what Oklahoma State did is they threw to Brennan Presley, they threw to Gavin Freeman, they threw to their little slot guys like on first down as almost an extension of the running game to get like 5, 6, 7 yards as if it was a run. So I think you can count a lot of those short passes to Presley and Gavin Freeman in the run game too.
Yeah, I agree 100%. They came in, South Dakota State came into the game saying that we're going to stop Ollie Gordon. And essentially they kind of did and they kind of didn't. He still rushed for over 100 yards. I don't think it was as explosive as what you would have thought against a team like that. However, like you said, they did a great job of mixing things up and trying to find ways to get their playmakers the ball outside of Ollie Gordon. Brennan Presley was targeted like 6 times on the first drive.
Yeah.
And then Rashad Owens has multiple big-time gains. And, hats off to Casey Dunn for finding ways to exploit the defense while they're saying we're gonna stop your very best player.
I would totally agree. And, I keep hearing, hey, it's the first game of the year, not going to show a whole lot, this and that. You break down the film, you look at what happened yesterday. Oklahoma State was in several different formations. They went with the diamond. They went 10 personnel. Hey, they pulled centers. Joe Mahalski pulled a couple different times. They were pulling H-backs. They were pulling tight ends. They were pulling fullbacks. They were running counter scheme. They were running gap scheme. They were running zone scheme. They ran it with several different backs. Alan Bowman ran it a couple of times. And then they also threw to the running backs. This was not a vanilla OSU offense yesterday. They gave South Dakota State their best shot. And so this offense is what it is. It is what you saw yesterday.
Yeah, if you listen to Coach Gundy after the game, he was talking about he got a question about like Arkansas's film or something like that. And he said, well, Arkansas is going to benefit from seeing our film this game much more than we are going to see theirs when they blew out whoever they were playing, Pine Bluff, by 70. He said, but we're going to do what we do, and that's just how we're going to play. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. They're going to stick to what they're good at, and they're not going to try to hide anything. They've got – and even if they did try to hide something, they've got a full year prior of game film that everybody can go and look at because it's the exact same team. It's literally the exact same team. So why try to hold anything back? And it's a good opponent. So you can't really, you aren't playing a Pine Bluff or a Temple or anything like that. You're playing a team that's capable of possibly beating you, and beating anybody in the country. I don't dislike or anything like that what they did on Saturday.
Absolutely not. I thought Casey Dunn was fantastic from start to finish. I thought the fourth quarter, you're trying to end the game. It is what it is against a team that's selling out. And you're also trying to stay fresh. It got a little bit hotter there in the second half. But if you really look at the way that he ran the offense, and hey, OSU runs the same plays as every other team does. I mean, you have zone scheme, you have gap scheme, you have counters, you have powers, you have the slants, you have double. I mean, all these. Nobody's reinventing a wheel at this point in football. So a lot of play calling is, how do you tilt it? Like, how do you get in the right formation and get the defense to influence one way to get back to your play the other way? So like when OSU was running, say, a counter back to the right and then throwing the slant back to the left and opening that hole to get it to Deshaun Stribling, and when they were pulling their tight end around to influence linebackers so they could sit down a receiver in the middle of the field, the way that Casey Dunn was able to influence the defense Saturday to open the holes that he needed to, especially in the pass game, he did just a awesome job on Saturday getting this offense set up.
Yeah, he did. And one thing that OSU's done for years and years and years now that I think you saw a lot of is the RPO.
Yes.
The RPO is almost impossible to defend if you run it right.
And Bowman can do it. Right,
he does. And he looks a lot better doing it this year than he did last year. Just because it comes with comfort and it comes with, I have trust in my guys, and I trust the offense and I trust what we're doing. So I think you're going to continue to see him get better at it. But there's three. What people don't realize is there's three reads technically on an RPO. You've got the give, you've got the quarterback pull, and you've got the pass. So you as a defense, you're trying to defend three possible outcomes in one play, which is really, really hard to do.
Yeah, it's triple option football. It's just instead of pitching the ball backwards, you throw it forward. And several different times, South Dakota State would have what they call that overhang player, that player that is half run, half pass. We see OSU run that all the time. And if that overhang player came up and fit up on the run, which they were doing all day long, then Bowman would pull the ball and throw the ball to that slant.
Yeah.
And it worked all day long. It was really good offense. This was a really fundamentally sound, like from a defensive coach, if you're South Dakota State's defensive coach, you watch the game film, and I don't think you're mad or upset at all with the way your defense played. I think you just kind of look at it and go, hey, that's really good scheme with a lot of really good players, and it's well executed by a 42-year-old quarterback, and it is what it is, right? I mean, I think that's how South Dakota State's defense would have to evaluate that, because Alan Bowman was really on target.
Yeah, I really liked how he played. At first I was a little concerned in terms of accuracy. The first couple passes were kind of, questionable in terms of accuracy, but receivers made plays when they needed to make plays, and then towards, as you got deeper into the game, he started to really put it on guys. So I think maybe it's just a little bit of jitters, maybe still working out kinks. It is the first football game of 2024 for them. So there's a lot of stuff that goes into it, and they're playing a quality opponent, so there's definitely, there was a little bit of pressure there. There was a little bit of, hey, I can't really afford to mess up. But I think that you see him, you progressively saw him get more comfortable as the game went on.
I would agree with that. I think one thing I am very worried about is running back depth. We saw Ollie Gordon. Of course, he's the type of guy you need to keep feeding him because he's a bigger guy, and his moves are subtle,
right.
And he's very physical, which means he wears a defense down. So a lot of times he's going to be the most effective as the game goes on because as the defense wears down, he actually is getting stronger. So he needs his carries, but it's an interesting and it's a delicate balance because he also needs to stay fresh. We know that. Oklahoma State, this is a long grind. This is a tough schedule. But are you worried about the running back depth?
Yes and no. I don't know if you were paying much attention to this, but when you looked at Ollie Gordon on the screen or in person, he looks physically bigger, and in a good way. It wasn't bad weight. He put on some good weight. He looks a lot more physical than he did last year, and he was a physical running back last year. But I think that that's going to play a factor. Definitely once they get deeper into the season, I think he's going to be able to last a little bit longer. However, you've got to save him. You have to, because if you lose him, you lose one of arguably the best player in the country. So you have to be careful with how you work around things like that. And with him, he's a dog. He's just like, give me the ball, give me the ball, give me the ball, give me the ball. And the more you give him the ball, the better he gets. But as you mentioned, the guy out of Salt Lake City, He's a completely different running
Sessi
back.
Vailahi is his name.
He's a completely different running back than Ollie Gordon. He's more of a short, fast, shifty guy. I would say he's definitely not as physical and not as big, which I think is kind of a cool little 1-2 punch as long as you can get him comfortable and get him in the offense in the right ways. If you go back to I'll use the Dallas Cowboys because I'm a Cowboys fan, a few years ago when they had Tony Pollard and they had Ezekiel Elliott. Zeke was kind of more of a ground and pound kind of guy, and then Tony Pollard would come in and just run around people. Now I think Ollie Gordon has the capabilities to do both. However, if you ever are in a situation where you need more of a shiftier, faster running back, I think that he's going to play a part. But if you need that physical presence, which I think you're going to need in most games, you're going to have to go to Ollie because the guy
Trent Hallen.
Yes, he's a bigger and more physical guy, and I hope he gets more comfortable and starts to perform a little bit better. But it seemed to me like as soon as he would get the ball, he was straight. There was no cuts. There was no anything. He's just like
3 carries for 7 yards for him.
He ran like a Big Ten running back. And there's no disrespect to that. He ran like a Big Ten running back. It's a completely different offense and a different game in the Big 12.
It absolutely is. So the offense, I thought, looked very good. Alan Bowman yesterday, 24 for 33, Saturday for 245. At one time, he was 16 for 19. He had 2 touchdowns. More importantly, he threw the ball away when he needed to. Yeah. No interceptions. He had a long 58 to Rashad Owens on the ground for Ollie Gordon, 28 for 134. Okay, whatever. He netted 126 because he also lost yardage. Your second leading rusher. This is kind of what I'm talking about. Your second leading rusher yesterday was Alan Bowman. Yeah. I think, that's got to change. I mean, one of these backs, we saw Jaden Nixon had some huge runs last year for OSU to take the pressure off. One of these backs needs to get 50, 60 yards a game. So if they did that, now you are up to around 200 yards rushing, and now everybody's happy. I think if Ollie Gordon, if he can get up to around that 150, and then you can add 50 from your other couple of backs and Hallen and Vailahi, then that's right where you want to be right there. And then the receiving core, one really cool thing about that is Deshaun Stribling. He actually, Brendan Presley, first of all, had the most amount of catches. Deshaun Stribling had the most amount of yards, and then Rashad Owens had the longest catch. So the way that Alan Bowman was able to distribute the ball to 9 different receivers, and then of the big 3, of all of those 3, each one of them ended up leading at least one category in receiving. That was a pretty awesome deal from the passing game.
Yeah, it was really impressive in terms of distributing the ball. One thing that I think that you can look forward to, and this was just, I was just thinking as you were talking, and you saw a little bit of it, but I wouldn't be surprised if you see a little bit of Brendan Presley in the backfield, if you see a little bit of Gavin Freeman in the backfield. Yeah. And kind of serve as that running back, too. I hadn't thought about that. That's
a great idea, though.
Because those guys are experienced, and they're freakishly fast. I mean, really fast. So you can run sort of a triple option kind of thing if you want to with them. You can use them out of the backfield on a wheel route or just a swing pass. There's a lot of stuff that you can do. I mean, heck, you could even run a counter with them, fake to Ollie and give it and just say, hey, man, just get 2 or 3, or
just run to the edge.
Yeah, just try to beat somebody, because 9 times out of 10, they are going to be able to outrun somebody. Because Gavin Freeman, if you watched him in Oklahoma last year, extremely fast. Mm-hmm. Brendan Presley, you've seen him for however many years he's been here, extremely fast. I think that you're going to see some of that as the season goes on, not only to kind of offset defenses and kind of catch them off guard, but to also play to OSU's benefit and say, hey, we've got to conserve all these legs. Because one thing that they mentioned even during the fall, is like Coach Gundy's like, man, if it was a perfect world, I'd give it to him 20 times. Because one thing that I respect is that he was like, we've got to preserve his body for his future. He has got a bright future in the NFL, but he said that's not going to prevent us from using him when we have to win games. So I think they're approaching it the right way. I really like
that's why he's here, because he trusted Coach Gundy to treat him the right way, I think.
Right. And he said that when he was mentioning 20, 25 carries or whatever, Ollie was cool with that. He's never going to go in and complain about it. he may say, hey, give me the dang ball, man, let me go, but that's the competitiveness in him, and that's just the kind of player that he is. He knows that he has an impact, and he's a big time energy guy. That's the other thing that I wanted to point out when we were talking today. If you looked at the energy from that sideline, from Oklahoma State sideline, from the starters to the bench guys, from the very first snap, the energy was extremely high, and it lasted all the way through the last snap. It didn't matter that they were playing South Dakota State. They were ready to go.
Yep. Gundy is huge on positive mannerisms, positive thought, and, moving on. Hey, we got to move on. This happened. Right. It's a negative thing, but you don't want to create another negative by not being able to get over it. And I think that definitely does bleed. I think sometimes it comes off maybe as indifference in the face of some fans, like when things aren't going good, they want Gundy to throw a fit and they want him to be all pissed off. So to some fans, I think that comes off as indifference in the face of some adverse times. I think for a lot of us, it comes off, and I've been in that camp a time or two myself. So, hey, I'm throwing myself in there with everybody else. But I think really kind of in the long run, what it is, it's just level-headedness, and it's, hey, we're not going to dwell on negativity, and we're going to move on, and we're going to create positive results from here. So let's move to the defensive side of the ball. Kendal Daniels moves down to linebacker. We saw Jeff Robertson play, the redshirt senior linebacker from Choctaw. We saw Iman Oates finally get to go out there and let the big dog eat, and I thought he's going to be really, really good for this Oklahoma. He's going to be really good, I'm just telling you. And obviously, Trey Rucker was very, very good coming downhill from a safety spot, leading tackler yesterday. Nick Martin was sideline to sideline again. And then there were a couple busts in the secondary. Yeah. I mean, it was Oklahoma State defense, right?
Yeah. And here's the thing: is if you eliminate big plays, and especially in this last game, I don't know if they score. Like truly and honestly, you had a couple busts in the secondary coverage. First game, worst game, in my opinion. I think that they're going to improve on that, and I think that things are going to get a little bit better just as time goes on. Because what people don't realize is, yes, you have the exact same team you had last year, but it's a brand new season. So everything that they did last year, you can throw out the window. They have stuff to build off of, but it's a new season. It's new opponents. It's new. I'm sure schematically they're doing some things that are a little bit different because this is year number 2 for Nardo. So I think that you're going to see some different coverages and things like that. And I think that this South Dakota State game was a great chance for them to work on some of the things they've been working on in fall camp that they don't necessarily feel 100% comfortable yet because they're going to have it against Arkansas. Arkansas is not a great SEC team, but they are a good football team. The SEC is a really powerful conference, and they are going to win games in that conference. So I think with the whole offseason, the whole 3 games before they start Big 12 play, all 3 games are going to benefit Oklahoma State in some way because they are quality opponents. Tulsa is probably the least of them, and Tulsa's still not – they're not horrible. No,
absolutely not. Yeah.
So they're capable of. They will have
very capable players that can hurt you.
And it's fuel to the fire. It's Oklahoma State's coming to our place from just a couple miles down the road. I bet you $100,000 that Oklahoma State has more fans at Tulsa.
No doubt, yeah.
Tulsa
2-1.
Yeah, Tulsa's gonna. It's their chance to kind of knock off the big brother, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah, no doubt about that, but I do think it'll be close to 2-1 Oklahoma State to Tulsa fans. Hey, Kendal Daniels, it was fun to watch him. I know he's at a linebacker spot, and Oklahoma State had to play a lot more 40 front Saturday, meaning 4 down linemen, because South Dakota State plays tight ends. They like to unbalance lines. They like to run back to the nub side, so like they'll overload, say, on the right, and then they like to run a counter back to the left. And if you don't have at least 4 guys on the line, you're going to get massively outnumbered. And then they run it with the quarterback, which outnumbers you even 1 more +1 on that. We saw Gronowski run that counter back to the nub side a couple of different times. So Oklahoma State had to match that by playing an extra defensive lineman. I get it. I say all that to get to Kendal Daniels. Yes, he's playing linebacker, but it's like he's playing safety just 3 or 4 yards closer to the line of scrimmage. He's still reading run pass. He's still reacting up on the run. and still dropping into pass coverage when he reads pass. So it's like he's playing safety but closer to the line of scrimmage. It was really fun to watch him.
Yeah, no, I enjoyed it. I think that this is a better spot for him. I think he is more of a run-pass guy, more so of a run first than a pass.
Yes.
Coverage-wise, he's not bad. I just don't think he covers well enough to play safety. And especially once they get to the Big 12 opponents, and even Arkansas, they're going to have better athletes. And his physical presence, if I see a guy that's 6'4", 220, 230 pounds running at me, that's kind of scary. That's frightening, especially when he's coming from a linebacker position. And what people can't deny is that is a big guy. I mean, he's big. So I think that this linebacker spot is a better fit for him, and I would even say it's more of a kind of an invert, whatever you want to call it, to where he's kind of part of the secondary. He's kind of part of the front seven. It just kind of depends on the call and the situation, but it allows Nardo to be a little bit more versatile in play calling. It's not like you're dropping a normal, your typical linebacker back into coverage. No, this is a guy that's played safety for 2 years, that knows how to cover passes, and is capable of covering the pass, more so than your typical average linebacker who's probably not as fast, probably not as tall, physical, yes, but I would say 9 times out of 10 you're going to get if you're a linebacker, you are definitely run first, pass second. I think that he's a little bit more evened out in terms of play.
Yeah, so that 3-3-5, Oklahoma State likes to drop those 3 safeties, and many different times Kendal Daniels would be in the middle of the field, which fine. He's covering both sides of the field. He was fine at that. But one thing I really like about the way that it's setting up with him at linebacker is that you can have Trey Rucker on one side of the field and Kendal Daniels on the other. So now you're kind of balancing out and having each guy on both sides, which are your 2 most physically imposing tacklers. Now, I know Nick Martin, he's a hit stick. But Nick Martin's perfect in the middle of the field because we saw many different times. He's making a tackle on one sideline one play and another tackle on the other sideline on the next play. But and then to stagger that, so you have Nick Martin in the middle of the field, and then you have Trey Rucker, say, on one side and Kendal Daniels on the other covering your alleys. That's a pretty good setup. So I was able to put Kendal Daniels away from Trey Rucker.
Yeah, you also can't forget about Colin Oliver, because Colin Oliver, I believe, dropped back into coverage a couple times as well.
Yeah.
And one thing that I really liked, I think Nick Martin's probably my favorite player to watch on defense just because of his motor.
Yes.
He's a lot of fun to watch. He is a sideline-to-sideline guy, and he's a 100% max effort every single play. But one thing that I really liked, and this is, yes, it was a kind of a lower caliber opponent, but the amount of pressure that they got on the quarterback on Saturday was awesome.
Especially once they got a big lead.
Yeah, and they let Colin Oliver just kind of go, and that's what he's best at. Just let him play, and get that pressure on the quarterback. That is a really good quarterback that they played on Saturday. A Heisman Trophy of their level is what he won last year. So he is a good football player. Turned down, from what I understand, millions of dollars to go play somewhere else at a higher level. And he chose to stay at South Dakota State, which speaks volumes to his character. But he is going to play in the NFL. And Oklahoma State made him look extremely uncomfortable.
Yes, they did.
He didn't look very good, to be honest with you. And he is a good quarterback. I would agree with that. He did not look good, but I think that is due to Nardo's play calling, and that's because Oklahoma State played with a high motor on defense and was like, hey, we've got to get after this guy, because if we don't, he's going to hurt us. Yep.
And I love the fact that, we talk about South Dakota State. They love to throw the ball to their tight ends, to their backs. They love to run their quarterback in the counter scheme, and then they like to throw those quick outs to their slot receivers so they don't get jammed off the line of scrimmage. But what I really liked about Oklahoma State, one of the things I did defensively, as soon as South Dakota State did not have tight ends, Colin Oliver just completely dominated. I mean, they were trying to block him with a tackle, and it was like completely over. And you could see like 3 or 4 different times Gronowski, like after like just over a second, was like, I got to get out of here. I don't have any time.
Yeah. Colin Oliver reminds me a lot of Micah Parsons. He really does. He's a scary guy to rush on the edge, but he's also capable of dropping back into coverage, playing the run really, really well. It is a high caliber football player. And one thing that I really love, and I mentioned this last year, and I'll continue to do it, is he is a selfless defensive football player.
He is.
He doesn't give two craps about how many tackles he gets, but he's going to fit the whole ride. He's going to read his keys correctly. And if that leads to him just taking on an additional blocker so that somebody, Nick Martin, can come off the edge and make the tackle, then that's what he's going to do. He's a very sound and very technical football player that plays selflessly, which I really enjoy.
Absolutely. He is a wonderful player. So you have some great athletes, Nick Martin, Colin Oliver, and then obviously Kendal Daniels, Trey Rucker. Corey Black had a great interception where he just kind of like the receiver. He knew the receiver was going to sit at the sticks on a third down play. That's what Corey Black did. He drove on the first down marker and undercut the throw and got the huge interception when Oklahoma State was up 3-0, because you felt like if Oklahoma State got a multiple score lead against South Dakota State, who although they're FCS 1AA, South Dakota State wanted to run the ball, have 40 seconds in between plays, run the ball again, have another 40 seconds, and have the ball all day and control the clock. When Oklahoma State got that multiple score lead after the Corey Black interception, at that point, it was going to be a rough day for the Rabbits at that point.
Yeah, man, and what they were trying to do, and I knew that they were going to do this going into the game, they were trying to limit Oklahoma State's offense on touches.
Yes.
And what Oklahoma State did was like, hey, you can do that, but we're going to go freaking high tempo, and we're going to wear you out. And that's exactly what they done on the offensive side of the ball. With the in-helmet communication, I don't know if that plays a benefit into their quick, into their quick game, or if
you can only talk to one person, so they still have to signal the play to everybody else. So actually, the in-ear deal doesn't help with up-tempo because you still have to signal it in somehow.
Right, which is what I was getting at. I don't know how beneficial it is. It probably does help with telling the lineman, hey, we've got this pass pro, or we're doing this or this or this. But at the same time, I do like it, and I think when they do slow things down, that in-helmet communication is going to be really nice. But I didn't see. I don't know how much they used it on Saturday, because, like you said, it is really hard to go that quick a tempo when only Alan Bowman is getting the play call. So
right.
I don't know how they're going to continue to use that throughout the season, or if they're going to use it very much at all, unless they try to slow the game down. But that's not Oklahoma State's offense. They're going to be a high tempo, and they're going to try to run 10 plays in 110 seconds. They're trying to get on the ball, snap it, and then get to the next play.
I think you hit on it. I think, yes, they're going to call some plays through it, not every play, because sometimes they're going to want to go tempo, and it's impossible to do that when only one person's getting the communication, which is your quarterback. Then he's having to signal it. Instead of everybody looking over the sideline and getting the signal and hurrying up from that perspective. So I think where they're probably knowing Coach Gundy the way we do, I think the way that it's going to be an advantage for Oklahoma State is that they're going to be able to communicate. You hit it just a minute ago. The adjustments. Yeah. Like, hey, Alan, so-and-so needs to do this on that play. Hey, they have a 3 technique. Tell Preston that they need to double down on that 3 and get to this linebacker or whatever. I think that's where the direct communication is going to come in more so with a very veteran-type Oklahoma State team as far as making the adjustments versus necessarily calling in the plays with it.
Yeah, I think it's definitely going to be used more for the linemen more so than anything else.
Yeah.
Not only on pass pro, but if you've got an RPO, you got a run block, you got whatever. I'm sure there are verbal audibles that they're going to use every single play, and they could have 3 words that mean the exact same thing, because if you keep repeating the same thing, obviously the defense is going to catch on. However, I'm sure it may change every quarter. Heck, I don't know, but I think it's definitely going to be used more for Alan Bowman, Ollie Gordon, and the linemen. I think those are the 3 groups that are going to benefit from it the most. Obviously, the receivers being out so wide, they're probably getting signals and stuff from Trayson or whoever. So
yeah. All right, Chase, this has been a lot of fun. It was a great day Saturday. Final thoughts?
I think it's gonna be a dogfight on Saturday, this coming Saturday with Arkansas. I don't see it being necessarily a blowout. I think that Oklahoma State is capable of blowing them out, but it's the same approach that they had to this last week. They've got to come out and they've got to play their game and they've got to play their style and they've got to play fast, physical, and they've got to tackle again. They've got to read their keys. They've got to do everything that they did last week, probably just a little bit better. So,
would totally agree. Hey, Chase, I want to thank you for joining on this Labor Day weekend. It was a lot of fun this weekend. I want to thank all of you wonderful Oklahoma State fans for tuning in. Until next time, go Pokes.